once again. Hi, buenas tardes, good afternoon. My name is Abelardo de la Peña Jr. I'm the Director of Marketing and Communications with La Plaza de Cultura y Artes, welcoming you to tonight's En Casa con La Plaza. It's still a little light outside, a little warm. Hopefully it's gonna get cooler over the next couple of days. But today we have a really nice program for you, an En Casa con La Plaza session, sponsored by AARP California. These, of course, are La Plaza de Cultura y Artes virtual programs. We've been at it since April of 2020 during the pandemic. And now that we've opened up, we're still at it because we know that a lot of you can't make it to our site there at 501 North Main Street. So we're bringing our programming to you, to your homes, to your smartphones, pads, wherever you're at. Let's see, if you're on Zoom, please. We have the chat feature there. Let us know where you're viewing from. You could make comments, ask questions, use the Q&A feature. We'll take them after the presentation. Same if you're on Facebook, please use the comment section. Let us know where you're tuning in from. We'd like to hear from you with comments, questions, shout outs, whatever. This is gonna be a fun program. Let me see, just a couple updates. La Plaza de Cultura y Artes is open. We've been open since for a couple months now. But at our normal business hours from Wednesday through Monday, Wednesday through Monday, closed Tuesdays from 12 to 5. They're at 501 North Main Street. Also, we have exhibits. All of our exhibits are open, including our outdoor exhibit. It's an exhibit by Patrick Martinez. It's called Only Light Can Do That. It's a neon art mural that you can see even if you just drive up North Main Street, you could see it day or night. Then also our public programming has begun. We started last weekend with an incredible screening of the documentary Carlos Almaraz Playing with Fire. The Chicano artist, an icon, a revolutionary in art. We showed a documentary, had a little band play ahead of time, a panel discussion, and we're gonna have some more programming coming up real soon, which we'll talk after our presentation this evening. Welcome Yolanda Chacon Serna from Bakersfield. Thank you for joining us. Riley Tiller from Redondo Beach. All right, well, I've welcomed you. Now I'm gonna welcome our guest for tonight. Picturing Mexican America is a cluster of digital humanities projects committed to illuminating the long Mexican history of Los Angeles that's been erased through centuries of white cultural supremacy. It features photographs, archival photographs, maps, and historical documents. And putting it all together is Marissa López and her team. She's a professor of English and Chicano studies at UCLA, researching Chicanx literature from the 19th century to the present, with an emphasis on 19th century Mexican California. And if you haven't checked out her the Picturing Mexican America Instagram, you gotta. And we'll put down the links in the comment and in the chat later on. But with that, I welcome, please join us, Marissa, on En Casa.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm so delighted to be here. I'm delighted to be here on Zoom, and I look forward to visiting you all in person.
All right. Well, thank you so much. So I'm going to just kind of step back and let you talk about this incredible project that you've been at now for about 2-3 years, as I believe.
Yeah, and as we were just saying before we started streaming, time has lost all meaning in COVID. So you're right, it's about a couple of years now. But thank you. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen now, if that's okay.
That's fine. And I'm going to just mute.
Okay, I guess you're muting. All righty, here we go. I'm not going to share, I'm going to present. All right. Well, so again, hi, and thank you for having me, and thanks to all of you for being here. I'm here to talk about this, about Picturing Mexican America, which, as Abelardo just said, is a cluster of digital humanities, digital public humanities projects that I design and I manage. And La Plaza was one of our early cheerleaders promoting us on social media. So I am really honored and delighted to have this chance to be here with you all tonight. The Los Angeles Public Library was also an important early supporter of this project, and they're still an ongoing partner. So tonight, I'm going to explain the history of this project, I'll explain what it is and the history of this project and how I came to work with the library. And I'll also describe some of Picturing Mexican America, PMA's initiatives, sketch out our future plans, and let you know how to follow us. But to begin, I'm going to tell you a story about Los Angeles's first hotel, which you see here behind me, the Bella Union Hotel. So let's learn a little bit about it. So the Bella Union, and this is an image from the Los Angeles Public Library archives. It began life in 1835 as a store, which became in 1846 Pio Pico's office when he was the last Mexican governor of California before it became part of the United States. And the building was headquarters for US forces in Los Angeles during the Mexican-American War. And this map, which shows the battle plan of the Battle of Los Angeles, which is a real thing that really happened here in 1847. This is from the National Archives. So eventually in 1849, the building opened as the Bella Union, which was the best and only true, but the best hotel in Los Angeles, where people went to have a good old-fashioned Wild West time. And these images that you're seeing here, these are both from LAPL, from the Los Angeles Public Library. So remembering the Bella Union, Horace Bell, memoirist, whom you see pictured here, he wrote of his 1852 arrival in Los Angeles, and I'm quoting Bell, "The house was a one-story flat roof adobe with a corral in the rear extending to Los Angeles Street, with the usual great Spanish portal near which stood a little frame house. One room above and one below. The lower room had the sign Imprenta above the door fronting Los Angeles Street, which meant that The Star was published therein. The room upstairs was used as a dormitory for the printers and editors." So Bell goes on to talk about how these rooms were tiny and they had dirt floors that got muddy when it rained because the roof leaked. So it was Los Angeles' best hotel, and it is what passed for luxury accommodations back in the 1850s. But that said, the hotel bar apparently more than made up for all of that. So here, what you're seeing here, these as an advertisement from the LAPL archives. This image, this drawing is from Northern California. It's from UC Berkeley's Special Collections Library, and it pictures kind of gold rush era gamblers. But it also evokes the diversity of the crowd that would have gathered at the Bella Union, which you are about to hear about. So I'm quoting Bell again. "The bar was well supplied, so said the advertisement. It was well patronized, so says this truthful historian. In one corner behind the bar stood a double-barreled shotgun, while lying within convenient reach could be seen a couple of Colts of the old army pattern, carrying half-ounce balls and commonly called batteries. The bar was evidently not to be taken by surprise. The bar was well patronized, so reiterates this pious chronicler, and the patrons who came and went from the Bella Union bar during that time were the most bandit, cutthroat-looking set that this writer had ever set his youthful eyes upon. Some were dressed in the gorgeous attire of the country, some half ranchero, half miner, others were dressed in the most modern style. All, however, had slung to their rear the never-failing pair of Colts, generally with the accompaniment of the Bowie knife." So out of all of this chaos came The Star, which is the city's very first paper of record. And LAPL does have some original copies of The Star accessible in the history department and Central Library, which is also now open. And The Star, it ran from 1851 to 1879. And in 1855, a yearly subscription to The Star would cost you $5, payable in cash, corn, wheat, flour, wood, butter, or eggs. The Star had a Spanish language section called La Estrella, The Star in Spanish. And one of its first editors, Francisco Ramirez, was hired in 1851 as a compositor. So he set the type. And he was hired when he was only 14, and he rose very quickly to become editor eventually of La Estrella in 1854 when he was 17. And he left in 1855 to found his own Spanish language paper, El Clamor Público, which was the first Spanish language, fully Spanish language paper in the state. So the history and the architecture of this hotel, of the Bella Union, were puro Mexicano, totally Mexican. It was a really important place where some of the very first Mexican-American writing was produced, where Mexican Californian leaders hashed out strategies for combating Anglo-US aggression, and where all kinds of people came to socialize, all kinds of people. So what happened to the Bella Union? Well, now it's Fletcher Bowen Square, across from the Spring Street Courthouse, a place some of you may be very familiar with. So the building is gone, but some of the Bella Union's history is preserved in 2 plaques marking 2 different historical landmarks. So these placards, you can find them at Fletcher Bowen Square. So the first of these placards announces the spot as California Registered Historical Landmark number 656, which was the site of the Bella Union, where, as the placard tells us, the first overland mail coach arrived in 1858. No mention here of Pico, of Spanish architecture that Bell discusses, or of Mexican society. No mention of the imprenta either, but that's because right next to this plaque, you'll find the one for landmark number 789, which commemorates the star, but not La Estrella, and definitely not El Clamor Público or Francisco Ramirez. So these 2 plaques and the story of the Bella Union are perfect examples of something entirely unsurprising, which is that commemorating history in California, especially in Los Angeles, has largely meant celebrating Anglo-Americans and deliberately ignoring, even erasing Mexican Americans. So the story of California, of early California, that we still tell, that our kids still learn in school, is basically this. So once upon a time, indigenous people lived here. Then the Spanish arrived, and that was pretty awkward, but the priests sometimes at the missions weren't always so nice, but they meant well. And then some history happened. Mexico gained its independence or something. We don't really know. We don't really care. And then things were kind of messed up for a while. But then finally, white people showed up and made everything better. So there's a lot that we could dig into here. But the thing that has always bothered me, of all the things that bother me in this narrative, the thing that has really always bothered me the most is how everyone just glosses over the Mexican period, like it never happened. Right? We've got the indigenous, the Spanish, and the Yankee settlers. But California used to be Mexico. It had Mexican leaders, Mexican dramas, Mexican laws, and every important white guy in early California history was able to become important because he married a Mexican woman and got in good with a prominent Mexican family. But these stories have really been erased. And the systematic erasure of these stories is the function of white cultural supremacy, and it contributes to the overall impact of institutional racism. And as you heard in Abelardo's very nice introduction of me, I'm an English professor, English and Chicana studies. I'm not an expert on public health, poverty, or immigration, but I know about stories and their potential to impact people's lives in meaningful ways. And it's my belief in the power of story and my commitment to telling the long story of Mexican Los Angeles that drives Picturing Mexican America. Really though, I'll be honest with you, Picturing Mexican America exists because I am a super duper history nerd. So if there's a historical marker to be read anytime, anywhere, I will read it. Seriously, it drives my family crazy. And you can see there's my son. You can see him poking his little head there above a set of placards, rolling his eyes, I'm sure, even though you can't see it in this picture. So, but I'm a professor of history. I'm sorry, I'm not a professor of history. Maybe in another life I would have been. I'm a professor of literature. I'm a lover of old books and dusty archives. But a couple of years ago, I started to get really interested in pictures, basically, in visualization, right? In how people conceive of images and how images affect the people who view them, the impact that images have on social and political life. And that interest, as it developed, that was the seed of Picturing Mexican America. So let me set the scene with a very brief, I promise, intellectual genealogy. Because mostly I started thinking about pictures because I was writing my second book, which came out in August of 2019. And this book is about contemporary Chicanx cultural production. And I have a chapter in this book on conceptual photography, on art photography. So I was doing a lot of reading about the history of photography, the emergence of visual technologies, and what it means to see. And I started thinking, as I always do, about Californios, about 19th century Mexican Californians. And I wondered what they saw and what impact emerging technologies like cameras would have had on them. So for example, I teach this book, which some of you may have read. I teach it as an object lesson in late 19th century Mexican-American disenfranchisement. Like I teach it that way. Everybody teaches it that way who teaches this book. It's basically about how Anglo settlers, the squatters, stole land from Mexican Californians, the Dons. It's a novel. And rereading it recently while writing my own book, I noticed that photography and picture making play really important roles in the book and were maybe working at cross purposes to my teaching. So Mercedes, who's one of the main characters in the book, one of the main Mexican protagonists, she imagines keeping her memory of a cityscape photographed. Ruiz de Burton uses that word photographed, and she wrote this in English, photographed in her memory. And Mercedes not only has a photo of her Anglo boyfriend, but she wants to have that photo enlarged and painted when he leaves on a business trip, so she can remember him better. So what did it mean then for her, a woman of color in the 19th century, not just to think in pictures, but to imagine herself taking, making, and even altering them? And what, moreover, would it mean for 21st century Latinos, Latinx people to see her command of and her presence in a 19th century visual field? So this is the picture, though, that really catalyzed my thinking around this question. And this is a picture of Mariano Vallejo's daughters. And Vallejo was the Mexican military commander of Alta California at the time of the transfer to US rule, so in 1848. He was also the most wealthy and powerful man in the state at that time. And I've written a lot about Vallejo, and I came across this image while researching in his archive at Mission Sonoma in Northern California. He supervised the building of that mission, and he has a house nearby. And the archive there, all of it, it's a really interesting archive, like furniture, clothes, shopping lists, and anything that would be in a house. It's all boxed up and packed in the attic. And that archive is maintained by the California Department of Parks and Rec. And so when I was researching there, I wasn't interested in Vallejo's daughters, but I found this picture so compelling. It's so weird and creepy. Then the ranger on duty let me take a digital copy, and I have had it up in my office for forever. I've been looking at it for years. There's so much going on here, both inside and outside the frame of the image. So who is taking this picture and why? Where are they? Why aren't they facing the camera? And what do they imagine the viewer is seeing? Like, are they showing us something, or are they refusing to be seen? So because I'm a professor, I did what professors do. I wrote an article exploring these questions, and the title of that article was Picturing Mexican America. But even after I wrote this article, I just felt like my questions weren't resolved, and they're not questions that can be resolved the traditional ways professors resolve questions. The traditional methods of scholarship just weren't getting me where I wanted to be. I was really lucky, incredibly lucky, that around the same time that I reached this professional crossroads, the American Council of Learned Societies rolled out a brand new program, brand new, the Scholars in Society Fellowship. It was brand new in 2019. And it pulled together several threads that I had been following in my own work, especially around career diversity for PhD students. What other things can you do with a PhD besides be a professor? So I've been doing a lot of work around that in my departments, and also innovation in doctoral education, more broadly speaking. So this opportunity catalyzed my thinking as I worked on the application for the fellowship. So over the years, you remember I'm a super duper history nerd. So it will not surprise you to hear now that over the years, I've used several different history apps. tools that allow you to explore the history of a place through walking tours or map pop-ups. And I've always thought, somebody should really make something like this for California. And surprisingly, there's not really anything like this for California. But when I got this fellowship, I became that person. So I'm the person that's going to make something for California. And the fellowship requires applicants, or one of the main points is to pair faculty at PhD granting institutions, to pair them with a public facing institution. And I was lucky, again, that LAPL agreed to partner with me. So I'm the scholar and the Los Angeles Public Library is the society. And with the app that I'm making, I hope to change users' perceptions of space to make clear the enduring, consistent presence of Latinx people in the United States. So I want this app to make knowledge, and I'll put knowledge in scare quotes, genuinely public and collaborative, using digital media that really changes the definition and the boundaries of public, and what we mean by the public who has access to and partakes of the public humanities. So I'm most interested in what the public makes of cool archival finds like this. So what is the political potential of circulating a map like this, right? That's something that visualizes the deep Mexican history of the land on which UCLA now sits. It used to be a Mexican rancho, like everything in LA. So the Los Angeles Public Library doesn't hold maps like this, but Rare Books at Central does have some really nice mid-century art books, mid-20th century art books that include reproductions and interpretive essays. The California State Archives holds the largest collection of maps like this, and they just recently digitized for open access their complete collection in September 2019. So anybody can look at any of these maps. So what does the public make of things like this? This is a research question for me. How do conversations around access, equity, and belonging change when we see something like this? Right, so to explore that potential, I can't just be interested in a public problem. I have to work with the public to better articulate problems and collaboratively imagine solutions. And that's where the library comes in. As some of you may know, the LAPL has both an extensive photographic archive. It's extensive and significant and accessible to all of you. And they also have a robust and diverse slate of well-attended public programs. So their community reach, the library's community reach, was part of what attracted me to the library in the first place as a partner for this fellowship. But that piece has been on hold for a while, obviously, for obvious reasons. And I had been researching at the library. So I got this fellowship, I took a sabbatical, and then the world imploded. But I did get to have a good 6 months at the library researching before COVID shut everything down. And in that time, I learned a lot. I learned a lot from librarians and staff. So I've spent my first couple of months in very enjoyable pursuits, having lots of lunches and coffee and conversations and getting to know people who worked in all different capacities at the library. These conversations were really foundational for me. They helped me get a handle on the scope of the library's work. They helped clarify the ways in which my project, as it was kind of emerging, could align with and support the library's mission to serve the people of LA. And all of the people that I met at the library had lots of really interesting ideas about what an app like I was imagining might look like and do. So 2 of these conversations were watershed moments for me. So first in Rare Books with Rose Napka, who's the librarian archivist for digitization and special collections. So she's in charge of scanning things, old things, and making them accessible to all of us. So she helped me understand just how much archival material LAPL holds. And it's been amazing, amazing to get to look at stuff like this, which is just at the library. Not all of this stuff is immediately apparently useful for the app that I'm making or for our various social media endeavors, but it's such a gift to be able to read it and handle it And the energy of rare book staff and librarians is just galvanizing, because unlike some archives, they want people to see and use this material. So if you take nothing else away from my talk, I want you to know that this material is at the library and it's yours. You can read and handle this stuff too. They're going to make you wear like special gloves, but this material is part of our city's cultural legacy and it belongs to all of us. So the other pivotal meeting that I had was with Edwin Rodarte, who's the senior librarian for emerging technologies and collections. And his insights were really crucial, and he connected me with volunteers from Hack for LA, which is a group of civic-minded tech professionals looking to donate their talents and their free time to projects like mine that benefit the public good. So they've really been key factors moving Picturing Mexican America from a vague idea. Somebody should really make something like this for California. So they've really helped me go from there to a back-end ready design prototype. So I'm going to explain what that means in a second. I started work at the library with some idea of what I was doing. I had taught DH 199 at UCLA. This is a topic-based research seminar for digital humanities minors. I taught that in spring 2019. And for that class, I led a team of 10 undergraduate researchers. You can see some of them here in these pictures, who built the core database for the app by adding material from special collections at UCLA, metadata, geolocation information. And I trained them in how to work with archival material and how to think about this kind of stuff. And for the class, they completed a series of small assignments, including they wrote blog posts for my website about individual archival finds and collections. The students also built mock-ups of the app. This was part of the work they did for the class. And all the apps that they built, they share similar features. They all have a map platform, gamification, and social media interfacing. So I had a vision of what it could look like, what the app could look like. And here's another example. But Hack for LA helped me take it to the next level. So last January, they ran a visioning workshop. Visioning workshop, that's a phrase that I learned from working with tech professionals. So they did this with me up at UCLA. We gathered about 20 community stakeholders on a Saturday morning to brainstorm. We had academic librarians, public librarians, high school teachers, high school students. It was a really diverse group. But also at the session were design students from General Assembly, which is an organization that offers career training and development for design professionals. So PMA was one of their pro bono real world design projects. And that was another gift that the universe handed me. So from that session, that visioning session, General Assembly built this prototype, which is what we are now designing the backend to. So that work has been very slow, but we are almost ready for a soft launch, for a soft beta launch. So this is actually one of my favorite features. The La Selfie, it's face matching software. So we have a bunch of images and biographical information in our database. You can take a selfie and be matched with a Mexican Californian from the 19th century. So it's one of my favorite features. And again, you can, and I'll show you the links at the end, but I will just say you can sign up for updates at picturingmexicanamerica.com so you can know when this app is ready for you to download and try out for yourself. So as I said, it's slow. And as that work has been progressing, my work on PMA has spawned lots of branches. So where I used to just say, I'm building an app. Now I describe PMA as a cluster of digital humanities projects, as you heard at the top of my talk and in my introduction. So since I started working on PMA, I've been incredibly grateful for how the people that I brought onto my team have really pushed me to explore. So take Instagram, for instance. All of the millennial grad students and all of the Gen Z undergrads on my research team insisted on an Instagram feed. And I was doubtful because I did not really understand Instagram. But I took a leap of faith, and that our Instagram feed has been really generative, connecting me to lots of like-minded organizations and people like La Plaza, and really elevating the visibility of our efforts. So you can find PMA now on the web, picturingmexicanamerica.com, and on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube, but we're most active on Instagram. So if you're on that platform, you should definitely follow us there to keep up with us and to see some of the very cool material that will one day soon be in our app. And our mission on Instagram is to circulate archival material, to free it from wherever it's being ignored, to try to get as many eyes on it as we can, to start conversations. And when I say our, I'm speaking in the royal we, but there are actually other people that work with me. I mean, the researchers and writers who are mostly students that I have working with me. So with our posts, we try to connect visions of the past to things that are happening today. And we're doing this because our long game is to change how people perceive the space of Los Angeles, to intervene in how people think about who has a right to be in this territory that we now know as the United States, but which used to be Mexico. And before that, Tovangar. We're trying to change the conversation about belonging and make new stories possible. So for example, here's a post we did last year. This is an image from LAPL. And I'll just read the post text to you. It's easy to forget that there's a presidential campaign going on right now. You guys remember that? So many things have happened, but there was a presidential campaign going on right now, even though we're all aware that the approaching contest will be a momentous one. But did you know that in 1872, Los Angeles experienced a mayoral contest that was arguably even more consequential? Join us at 12:30 to learn more as we talk with historian David Torres-Roof about that contest, which he describes in his book. In this book, David talks about James Toberman's defeat of incumbent Cristobal Aguilar to become in 1872 LA's 12th mayor. Toberman's victory marked the end of shared politics in LA and ushered in what David describes as an exclusivist racial vision that effectively erased Mexican Americans from the city's political and historical landscape. It also cut Mexican Americans off from emerging civic infrastructure in ways that brought to life LA's current divisions of race and class. In other words, we can trace our understanding of race, space, and place in Los Angeles all the way back to the 1872 mayoral election. We'll talk about all of that and more this Friday, and you can find that conversation with Professor Torres-Roof on our YouTube channel. Another post from last year featured an image you already saw of this rainbow coalition of gamblers, but we added to the post, these are all images from LAPL, and we connected it to COVID-inspired instances of anti-Chinese sentiment. So it still feels fresh and relevant. And I will read the text of the post to you. Anti-Chinese violence has a long history in the United States and was particularly bad in 19th century LA. Now more than ever, when our Asian friends are afraid to leave the house for fear of getting yelled at, spat on, or worse, we would do well to remember where that kind of nonsense might get us. As it is today, 19th century LA was incredibly cosmopolitan. The drawing above, made around 1850 by an anonymous artist, is from UC Berkeley. In it, a gambler deals to Chinese, Mexican, and Spanish players from different classes. Mexican and Chinese immigrants lived, worked, and played together. They also were subject to racialized violence, but the Chinese really did have it worse, and we don't want to romanticize their cross-racial solidarity. Sure, late 19th century LA was an increasingly dangerous place for Mexicans, but nothing ever happened to them that was as bad as what happened in LA's Chinatown in 1871. That October, a mob of Angelenos descended on Chinatown with guns, knives, and ropes. They hauled residents out and hung them from improvised gallows. The mob looted homes and businesses and lynched 19 Chinese immigrants. The photograph above, from LAPL, shows victims' bodies piled near the LA jailhouse. A plaque at 419 North Los Angeles Street commemorates the event in downtown LA. It says that, quote, "Some policemen and citizens tried to help, end quote. But memoirist Horace Bell, if you remember him from the beginning of the talk, he also talks about this. Horace Bell disputes that kind of revisionism. Quote, "The police force of the city furnished the leaders of the mob," he writes in Reminiscences of a Ranger. Quote, "The chief of police of Los Angeles stationed his policemen and the deputies he had mustered in for the occasion at all strategic points with orders to shoot to death any Chinese that might stick a head out or attempt to escape from the besieged buildings." End quote. This wasn't the first or the last act of Chinese violence in the city, but it was definitely one of the worst. In these dark times, let's remember that history and make sure it doesn't happen again. So our focus is on Mexican Los Angeles, but we want to illuminate how diverse Los Angeles has always been and to show how important cross-racial solidarity and collaboration is in our various struggles for social justice. And that diversity and solidarity is really at the core of the work that I'm doing now with A26LA. So A26LA, for those of you who don't know, is a local chapter of a national nonprofit organization dedicated to supporting students age 6 to 18, so K through 12 students with their creative and expository writing. And also they help teachers inspire students to write. So we have been collaborating since last year on a series of workshops based around PMA themes and materials. And we ran the first of these in April. Notice the picture. So I'm hoping to do more of these kinds of workshops led by UCLA students in the coming year. And right now, like literally right now, we're in the middle of A26LA's week-long summer writers workshop, which I'm running together with several of my graduate students. So the focus of the week-long workshop that we're doing is similar to this Future History of LA. We're having the students, they're about 20 middle and high schoolers. So we're having them engage in writing that helps them learn about history, building towards a larger creative project. So documenting history, which is the workshop that I led on Monday. That was the first of 3 linked workshops that we're doing in the series. The other 2 are Imagining Space. That one just happened this afternoon. And tomorrow we're doing Writing the Future. So in mine, on Monday, we were thinking about where historical knowledge comes from. Like, how does stuff in history textbooks these students are using in their classes, how does it get there? So where does historical knowledge come from? And in the second workshop, which happened just today, the students were looking at different forms that history writing can take. And in the third workshop, tomorrow, they're gonna practice writing themselves into the future. And they're also working with a teaching artist, Javi Moreno, whom some of you may know from the Independent Shakespeare Company's Free Productions in Griffith Park, which will be starting up again this August. And Javi, he led a workshop yesterday. He led the students in developing spoken word pieces around their own LA. Like, I am LA, so what does LA mean to me? It was really beautiful and amazing. It was amazing. So we have programs though for adults too. So say you're not a K through 12 student, that's okay, neither am I. We have other stuff going on. Together with the Los Angeles Explorers Club, we produced a series of self-guided bike tours, the first of which was called Daily Life in Early Los Angeles. We explore the kinds of things that early Angelinos did to entertain themselves. And we talk about what entertainment and popular culture and daily life in the 19th century, what they reveal about racial and ethnic tensions in Los Angeles today. You can enjoy this ride even without a bike. So say you're not a K through 12 student, you don't like to ride bikes, that's fine. Most of the ride can be walked, and you can also follow all of it on Google Maps using Street View. And we released our second ride about Arcadia Bandini, which focuses on Santa Monica and the West Side. So by way of closing, I want to share one of the stories from our daily life ride that's super interesting, but it also speaks to the racial conflicts that have consumed Los Angeles and the entire country for most of the past summer, as this story is about horses. So Andres Pico and Jose Sepulveda were elite Mexican Californians who moved in the same social circles, but they weren't especially fond of each other. They were kind of like frenemies. And they loved to race their horses. But unfortunately for Sepulveda, Pico's stallion Sarco always came out on top. He always won, and Sepulveda really needed a win. So at the end of 1851, he imported Black Swan, who was a very expensive Australian steed who was as famous in her home country as Sarco was in California. But the horse was frail when she arrived in San Francisco late that year. Everybody wondered, could this horse stand a chance against Pico's stallion? Sepulveda believed in his mare, and he hatched a plan. He made sure that Pico and a crowd were present and watching when Black Swan arrived in LA. And Californios favored Spanish-bred horses, so an Australian-bred horse already was like weird, and she looked weak. And Sepulveda hoped that the mare's heritage, along with her frail state, would fool Pico into thinking that a gamble between Black Swan and his horse was an easy win. And it worked. A lot of people staked a lot of money on this race, betting on Sarco to win. In total, the bets added up to around $50,000, which was a lot of money in 1851. $50,000 in cash and a whole lot of horses, heifers, and sheep. So the two horses met on March 20th, 1852, and Sepulveda had been training Black Swan in secret, and his efforts paid off. So there's this huge crowd that gathered in front of the Belly Union, and they were stunned when Black Swan swiftly defeated Sarco in 19 minutes and 20 seconds. Finally, a win over Sarco, over Pico. It wasn't just the win, though, that freaked everybody out, because the jockey who rode Black Swan to victory was Black. This never-before-seen phenomenon, a Black jockey, was so noteworthy that reports of the race describe how the crowd gasped in shock when they saw him. So this shows up in news reports of the race, but nobody thought to record this Black jockey's name. His identity has been lost to history, and we only know that he was Black. And what's striking to me about this story is how our recovery of this story, it just leads to another erasure. The more we see, the more we're aware of not seeing. And it's like the catch-22 of aging, right? The older and wiser you get, the more you're aware that you don't know. So similarly, the more we uncover and recover, the more we realize we don't know, and we're never gonna know. Who was this Black man? And what must it have meant for him to achieve this great victory under the thumb of a Mexican owner, a Mexican horse owner? There was no legal slavery in California at the time, so he was an employee. And a colleague of mine at UCLA, Fred Degar, who's a very well-known British Guyanese writer, I'm sure some of you have read his work, but he was so struck by this story when he did the tour that he wrote a poem for the unnamed Black jockey. And he sent it to me, and when I read it, it made me cry, and I was moved in ways that I still can't fully describe or understand, and I convinced him to do a reading. And we staged a conversation between the two of us that you can find on our YouTube channel. We talked about the poem. He read the poem. We talked about the poem and how the unnamed jockey helps us unpack all of the rage and complexity of our current historical moment. So like I said, you can find that conversation on our YouTube channel, and I really encourage you to watch it, or at least just watch the part where Fred reads this poem. It's a beautiful poem. And it was also really energizing to get to think with another person in a different way about how and why stories are important, about how they empower, how they build bridges, foster solidarity, and inspire people to create. And all that is also at the heart of everything that La Plaza does. I'm so grateful for all their programming, all their exhibits, and I'm very happy that things are slowly opening up again and coming back to life on Main Street. La Plaza made an incredible pivot during COVID, and all of you here know that. They were there for all of us, and I'm honored to be a part of that work tonight, inspiring people to create a better tomorrow. Well, thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Marissa, that was incredible. I've learned a whole heck of a lot. First of all, I'm not the only placard reading person out there. I often drive my partner crazy in wanting to read the text. Oh, look, there's some text. It's not enough to, of course, it should be enough to just be there and to be in the now and to observe, but to get a deeper meaning, at least of what you're looking at, you got to read the text. And that's what Picturing America, I think, for me anyway, you show these. I follow you religiously on Instagram, and I know many of us do.
Thank you.
But you get so deep into the stories behind it. So tell us a little bit about who's working with you to put at least the Instagram together, in doing the research, selecting the images that you're posting and writing the stories, because they're told in a very compelling way that really just grabs you.
Thank you. So I have, let's see, I have 3 graduate students who work with me, and I have kind of a rotating cast of undergraduate researchers who work with me in an independent study class, and they do a lot of the writing. So I do almost all of the research, and I'll kind of get story ideas and put them in a big spreadsheet and put them on a spreadsheet with the idea, and give them a couple sentences about the topic, and give them links to either articles or other resources they can read. And if I have an image, I'll put a link to the image, but they are responsible for finding the images. And so they do a lot of that initial work. And they are excellent writers. We have excellent students at UCLA. And so they'll do the writing, and then I'll just kind of go through it to make it in our house style, so that all of our posts have that kind of consistent tone. That's me, but I have the undergrads who do the bulk of the research and the writing. And so that's how a lot of the content is generated. But then we're also doing a lot of research for the app, which one of the features of the app is it's like a map platform. So, as you move through the space of LA, you'll see hot points on a map, or you can see like what's near me. And so those images are all tied to ranchos. So there are about 49 in LA County, spread out across LA County. And we have researchers assigned to, I have researchers assigned to each rancho. They are responsible for kind of digging into the backstory, writing up little summaries of the rancho, and then digging through LAPL archives, the Huntington archives. There's a few archives around the state, the California State Archives, trying to dig up information, digging up images that are specifically related to the rancho. And so all that is going to be in the app, but from there, also a lot of great stories pop up. Like, the more you dig, the more you see. So that's where most of the content comes from. We'll also troll is the right word, scour the archives of the Southern California Historical Quarterly, which has been publishing since 1893, and publishing all kinds of interesting stories. And so just even going through their table of contents, you can turn up all kinds of interesting stuff. That's where we found the Black Swan story. That some researcher had written about it a lot of people have written about it, but how we found out about it was from an article in the Southern California Historical Society Quarterly from 1923. So there's all kinds of stuff in there, and all of this stuff is it's open access because it's so old.
Yeah. You spoke of the relationship with the LA Public Library. And earlier this month, we had an En Casa con la Plaza session with Luis Villegas, who's a guitarist, and he worked at the library, and that's where he learned about he transitioned from a heavy metal rock guy into flamenco jazz, and it was by what he found at the library. Now, when you started your research and working with these professionals there at the library, what was their reaction to what you were trying to do, and how did they respond?
The librarians in general are the greatest people on earth, and our librarians at Los Angeles Public Library, I cannot say enough good things about. It's just like a giant building full of really enthusiastic, supportive, gung-ho people. So they are bracketing me for the moment. Like, they are just there to help anybody who walks into the library find stuff. Anybody can walk into the library and say, like, I'm interested in, the history of this building, like, help me. And they're just the nicest, kindest, most knowledgeable people. So when I first started working at the library, I reached out first to a woman named Ani Boyajin, who's head of a lot of things. She's one of 3 principal librarians there, and head of, among other things, rare books and special collections is under her umbrella. So I reached out to her first about the fellowship, and then, I got the fellowship and we moved forward, and she connected me to all the different subject librarians, and she introduced me to people. And like I said, I just started having lunches and coffees, and everybody was really enthusiastic. And especially the rare books librarians, who were just like, great, we have all this stuff, and we're always looking for ways to get people to see it, always looking to connect with students and K-12 teachers, K-12 students, and even just the people of Los Angeles, because there's so much cool stuff there, and it's not a lot of people come to look at it. And I think not a lot of people know that it's there. I certainly didn't know it was there. I did not know that we have a copy of the Los Angeles's 1835 charter, which elevated the city from a pueblo to a city, and it made Los Angeles a city, and it made Los Angeles the capital of California. Los Angeles was, for a very brief time, the capital of California. That's a whole story for another time, but like, we have these documents. And so they were fantastic, and they continue to be really fantastic supporters, enthusiastic supporters.
Right. Now, you spoke in your presentation of the despicable Chinese lynching, the lynching of the Chinese people there close to Olvera Street, I think it was Calle de los Negros. And so now we're seeing the anti-Asian hate, for all intents and purposes, due to a lot of factors, but especially because of coronavirus. Are you seeing it in other things that you're finding in the presenting on Picture Mexican America that are relevant or that have ties to what's going on now?
You mean in specifically in terms of like anti-Chinese sentiment?
Well, in any of the in any of the topics that you're presenting, or any of the photographs that you're showing, or any of the historical figures, or do you see any connections to what's going on just in contemporary times?
Yeah, I mean, it really is true that history repeats itself, and it really is true that the more things change, the more they stay the same. So we have done, I was trying to think like how to answer this best, like in kind of broad thematics or in specific posts. We had a post, for example, about like David Spence and the ouster of Governor Michel Torrena in the 1840s, and how the details are hilarious, but they're not hilarious, but they were so evocative of Trump, and so evocative of Trump's denial of the election results. So then when we did that post about this event in California history, then we connected it really explicitly with what was happening with Trump. So there's we're always coming up against stories that resonate in acutely similar ways, and that has just been, I don't know what the right adjective is for it. Eerie. I mean, we did a post about smallpox epidemics, a smallpox epidemic, and in particular in the 1820s, and the toll that it took on Native Americans and missions. And the death statistics are staggering. I mean, the death statistics for Native Americans in the mission system as a whole are staggering, but in particular, this one pandemic, this epidemic, and how sure it affected everybody, but like it really just decimated the Native American population. And these health disparities that we're seeing in the 1820s is exactly what we're seeing with COVID too. So I'm, I don't know what to make of that. We're just shining a light on it. And so I'm like, oh, isn't this interesting? And hopefully public health people and policy people can come up with solutions that we need.
Yeah, we could only hope. What type, or just in a general category, what type of posts in general elicit the most likes or comments on your Instagram feed?
Yeah, I'm glad that you asked that, because it's been a real learning experience seeing how certain things do and don't do well. So one thing that we learned early on, although I keep forgetting that lesson, is that people don't like drawings on Instagram, or the Instagram algorithm does not like art. So we started showing, we would occasionally show diseños like the one I showed you of Buenos Aires, the UCLA's Rancho. And those just tanked, and any kind of drawings would tank. So if I'm going to do a drawing, like, people just like photographs, and they like photographs of people and old people, people from a long time ago. And our followers tend to respond really energetically to baseball posts, which is great, because I'm a huge Dodgers fan, although I speak in the royal we on our feed. So there you go. That is our best performing post about Los Choriceros. I think we had over 500 likes. And that was written by one of our undergraduate researchers. And that wasn't even an idea that I had. This was research that he had done on his own. So, I point them in directions, but I encourage them to just follow their own interests and dig up stuff. And I try to keep our material pre-1930, or like 1930s, around as current as I want to get. But people love baseball, and people love Pachuco posts. Like any Zoot Suit stuff gets hundreds of likes, and it always bumps up our followers. So, things that connect to contemporary Chicano culture, yes. And people definitely like the lighthearted stuff. People like, so baseball, Pachucos, and I'm ambivalent about this, and I tread lightly here, but people like posts that are about how racist everything was and still is. Like, people like to get riled up, which is, no surprise to anybody on the internet. There you go. But that one I thought would get a ton of likes, and it didn't really. But yeah, we've done a series of posts about street vendors and the kind of history of street vending. We had one post for National Ice Cream Day about an ice cream vendor, like late 19th century ice cream vendor. That one got a lot of posts. People like to be reminded how mad they should be about things, and it's important to be reminded how mad you should be about things. I don't want to be dismissive of it, but I also want to be careful about how we participate in that culture. But yeah, I'm still learning. And also Instagram changes its algorithm all the time. And I feel like we're veering into territory that's way beyond my pay grade. I just don't think I can figure it out. Because, sometimes things that I think based on past performance should do really well. It's like the stock market. It's no predictor.
Oh no, it's real tricky, and you just gotta, have those young folks helping out, because they're the users. But Marissa, thoroughly enjoyed your presentation. I'm sure our viewers did too. Martin Olvera from East LA, he says, "Yuppie, well done." So,
thank you. Thank you so much.
Lydia de los Rios, saludos de Claremont.
Saludos.
Stephanie C. Carrillo, viewing from LA and the West San Fernando Valley.
Okay.
And then we have Victor Hugo López from Bell Gardens.
Oh, it was just writing about the Lugos in Bell Gardens.
All right. Well, we're looking forward to further announcements on Picture America, Mexican America, especially the app.
Yeah.
Let us know, and we will definitely shout it out through our social media, and hopefully we'll do something live there at La Plaza. 2020 is looking like we're going to be doing indoor programs as well as our outdoor programs. And all of you, if you didn't catch this entire session or you want to watch it again, which I would encourage,
Absolutely.
yeah, you can check it out on our YouTube page. We've recorded it. It'll be archived on our YouTube page at La Plaza LA. It lives on our Facebook page at La Plaza LA, and also on our website lapca.org. You could also catch Marissa's previous En Casa con La Plaza session way back in, I think it was May of 2020. Woo.
I don't remember. Yesterday? All time runs together.
And that one was a really cool one. Corridos, cumbias y coronavirus with Marissa López. So it was based on the idea came to me because of an article you'd written.
About the coronavirus, Alan, I'm blanking on the duo who did a coronavirus corrido, and then I thought that was so interesting, and then I discovered there's a whole world of coronavirus music out there. It was amazing.
And there were so many, and just what corridos do, what folklorists do. They take contemporary happenings and they turn them into music and songs, and we saw a whole lot of them, and it was a fascinating session. So as was this one. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
All right. Well, everybody out there, thank you so much. Let me just give you a quick preview of what's coming up on both En Casa con La Plaza and also at La Plaza. We have this Friday our very first Summer of Salsa dance concert at La Plaza this summer with the Arsenio Rodriguez project. That's on Friday, July 23rd. It's doors open at 6. We open the doors. We have a little DJ playing. We have a dance floor, a little traguito going on there, and then 2 sets by the Arsenio Rodriguez project. This Sunday, our 10th anniversary family day. 2021 is our 10-year anniversary at La Plaza. We opened our doors in April of 2011, and this will be our very first family day of the year. We encourage you to come. We're going to have on stage Las Colibri, a fabulous all-female mariachi group. We're going to have danzantes, ballet folclóricos, teatro inside the galleries, workshop demonstrations, refreshments, and if you haven't gotten your coronavirus vaccine yet, Kaiser Permanente will be there providing free COVID-19 vaccines. So that's at 12 o'clock starts at 12 on Sunday, July 25th, and of course it's free. And then we got more going on, but you'll have to go to our website at lapca.org to get all the En Casa and at La Plaza sessions and programs and more to come. And again, thank you so much, Marissa.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure.
All right, we'll have to do this again soon. And we're looking forward to that app because I want to read some more text and go visit all these places.
And do that selfie. We got to see who you match with.
All right, I can't wait for that. All right, great. Well, buenas noches a todos. Thank you so much for joining us on En Casa con La Plaza. Muy buenas noches, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
Adiós. Gracias.